This meeting is being recorded.
Cool. All right. Well, do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. My name is Adonay. Thank you again for coming all to this class on Ceremonial Magick 101. Those of us who are Thelemites, that's kind of how we generally begin most of our talks and things or anything that we're doing. So it's kind of why I said that. And I'll explain a little bit about what that means later on. I definitely have a whole class on Thelema that we could do easily just as well for anybody who's interested. We're kind of today's the class where we're going to kind of touch on a bunch of little things, and then we're going to, we'll gauge interest, and from there go on see what we, delve into more. So to begin, I guess I want to define a couple things. What is ceremonial magic exactly? So ceremonial magic, also sometimes referred to as high magic, is very theatrical. It is a form of magic that predates the modern earth-based pagan traditions, traditional revival that we've seen with like Wicca and the whole just like the modern goddess movement, all that kind of stuff. Ceremonial magic is a conglomeration of quite a many things, from Hermeticism, which came out of when ancient Greece and Egypt collided. It evolved, original astrology that came out of Mesopotamia, the Renaissance work of Agrippa, and all sorts of just these other things that would eventually come together to form these cohesive systems of magic that really began taking hold in the occult revival in the late 1800s. Now, that word occult, a lot of people, some folks think it's a little heavily charged word. I've noticed others especially in the last couple of years, it's witches are not as shy to use that word as much as like when I first started getting this stuff 15 years ago. But occult simply just means hidden knowledge. That's all it is. And so technically tarot is can be considered occult, astrology, runes, numerology, all these things. But at one point in some of these like older texts, they were, I'm gonna just mute this person, so sorry. They were referred to as occult. Now in modern days, occult can be a really good differentiation on how to yes, occult, OCCULT, not to be mixed up with a cult, as in like, the Mansons or any of that kind of gnarly, not fun stuff. Occultism can be an easy way to differentiate between witchcraft and ceremonial magic, high magic. A lot of folks don't use the term high magic as much anymore because it can sound a little gaudy, a little like, you're looking down on other forms of magic. So occultism is kind of a word a lot of us have started using as well. Now, the difference between occultism, ceremonial magic, and witchcraft is witchcraft, for lack of a better term, and again, this is a very, very broad subject here. I mean, especially if you open your definitions to covering more than just the modern movement, but like really encompassing almost paganism as a whole, pre-Christian traditions. Witchcraft is predominantly earth-based. It usually has to deal with the earth cycles and season cycles, solar, lunar cycles, all those types of things. And in practice, especially in modern day, is generally what I refer to as results-based magic, right? A spell jar for protection, a talisman for self-love, a bath for purification, those sorts of things. You're trying to obtain something, even if that something is like, more confidence or better, is part of like working on yourself kind of stuff. As they always say, like witchcraft is spicy self-help, right? It's still, after a result, there's still a goal that you're trying to acquire. Whereas ceremonial magic for the most part, and of course, with every rule there is an exception, we focus more on what is called the great work. It's a term that comes from alchemy, so you may have heard this before in Alexander's alchemy class. But it's more focused on less earth-based, more the divine universes that exist beyond just this plane and beyond the astral plane itself, and that unification of the soul with the divine, however you understand that concept of the divine. It's a little bit more, I don't want to say, it's maybe a little bit more heady. It's a little bit more, it's less about the here and right now, which again, witchcraft doesn't always mean it's here and right now, but the way and methods in which we accomplish these things can be a little different. It's one of those, you try to say a definition of how they're different, doesn't always come across. Yes, Miranda, the microcosm versus the macrocosm, that is a great way of putting it. But once you start getting into the practices and you see what the rituals look like and you see what the mysticism looks like, you can start seeing the actual differences there. And I think that'll come across as what we go through here. And then the other thing I do want to mention too, as we get before we fully get started, is the whole magic, MAGIC versus magic with a K at the end as well. Magic with a K was added by Aleister Crowley, based on older spellings of the word magic as a way to differentiate it between stage magic and, occultism, witchcraft, that sort of magic. And it's, at this point, almost up to user discretion. A lot of folks use it when they're talking about their mysticism and their paganism, and a lot of folks don't. Whereas there is some sections who, because of how problematic Crowley was, don't use it. And at this point, to each their own. As well as the Lima say, do what thou wilt. It's up to your choice on that one. If you were to see my notes and a lot of the books we use here, we use it with a K. But again, I'm a Thelemite. That's kind of what I do. And again, I say this also as a Indigenous queer person of color as well. The K is a nice differentiation. And I've also seen some folks, the K will kind of be more ceremonial, and the MAGIC will be a little bit more earth-based paganism. So I've also seen that. So if you see and you're trying to wonder what the difference is, at this point, it's kind of a moot point. But at the same time, some people do ascribe meaning to it, and some people do ascribe a stigma to it as well. So do keep that in mind when using it. All right, so with that out of the way, let's get into it. I do want to address some of the things in here. All right, bam. Hey, 93, you're in a, hell yeah. Hermeticism, chilly, everyone, huh? Yeah, that's actually what we're going to start with, is Hermeticism. So Hermeticism is the foundation for ceremonial magic, occultism, the Western mystery tradition, which is another name. There's a lot of haughty and grandiose names to refer to High Magick, but Hermeticism is the foundation. So Hermeticism gets its name from the supposed founder of the tradition, Hermes Trismegistus, which translates to Hermes thrice great. Hermes thrice great, Hermes Trismegistus, is a conglomeration of two deities. One, which is the Greek god Hermes, which is Mercury, sorry. So Hermes, Mercury. The other is the Egyptian god Thoth. Now, the name Thoth, I mean, we all, everybody's pretty familiar with, the Pelican Beak god, the scribe, right? Thoth is actually the Egyptian, or the Greek pronunciation of the Egyptian name. The Egyptians would have never called him Thoth. That's what the Greeks called him. Thoth's actual name was Tahuti. Like DHTJY, something like that. Trying to put it into English is a little difficult. But Yeah, so Tahuti combined with Hermes would essentially create Hermeticism. It was this idea, and a lot of us, especially any of us bookworms in here, I mean, we're all witches, we're all pretty much bookworms, I like to think. Everybody, like, that meme that goes around, the morning of Alexandria, the burning of Alexandria and all that. Alexandria was pretty much the birthplace for this tradition, because Alexandria, the Library of Alexandria, was really like that central meeting point. After a certain point, when Greece and Egypt met, and the trading and the culture swapping was going back and forth so much, like these Greek these Greek individuals would become Egypt, would rule over Egypt as Egyptian pharaohs, and would take on Egyptian customs and cultures and wear and language, and almost and at a certain point, like, fought against Greece to protect Egypt. Like, the boundaries and the crossing and the cultural exchange was insane. And it is from Hermeticism that what came out of this melting pot, which, according to legend, and this is not exactly 100% factual, but it's kind of how the story goes. Hermes Trismegistus was a wise sage. Think of it as how a lot of modern traditions, an ascended master, if you will. And he was spreading this gnosis. And it's from his teachings that we get, is where we get alchemy, which would obviously become chemistry. It's where we get astrology, which is where we'd get astronomy from. And it's where we would get what used to be called sacred psychology, which obviously gave birth to modern psychology. And it's through Hermeticism that it's said that these traditions kind of came into being. Obviously, we know that's not historically true, but it's kind of fun sometimes to believe in the lore a little more than the actual facts, so long as you're not hurting anyone with it. But yeah, Hermeticism is where all this comes out of. You may be familiar with the word like hermetically sealed, because again, that has to do with like the actual chemistry that is built into Hermeticism. But the basic ideas and core tenets were these, Greco-Egyptian philosophical, psychological beliefs, that the universe has these laws that govern it and rule with it. The most famous example of this is the Qabalah, the as above, so below, or Emerald Tablet, those sorts of things. And yeah, so that's kind of a itty bit of Hermeticism. And we're going to touch on it a little more again, because again, it's one of the cornerstones for this entire ceremonial magic tradition, and so we're just kind of barely touching on it right now. The next thing I want to talk about and spend a little more time on is the other big cornerstone for ceremonial magic is Qabalah. Qabalah was originally this form of Jewish mysticism that evolved out of Spain in the 1500s. That was like a way, there were essentially commentaries to the Torah and how to understand the world and the universe and those sorts of things. Where it came into the magical circles is that Qabalah has been around a lot longer than just the 1500s, but that's like when like the first like writing started popping up. It's an oral tradition, goes back, yes, they don't need to tell you, goes back way longer than that. But the way it kind of entered the magical traditions was one of two ways. One way, which was a lot more open. The second way, which is not very nice. The Christian Hermeticists started essentially, who got into Qabalah, would eventually kind of take it and add their own anti-Semitic bent to it. And hold on, I'm just gonna right over here. got to mute. There we go. Yeah, so they would add these sort of like anti-Semitic ideas and concepts and essentially take this basic, really, really good framework and really sacred magical tradition that was held really, really close by these rabbis, and then just burst it open. And they would add alchemy to it. They would add a couple planetary stuff to it. But they kind of used it as an excuse to justify to justify the coming of Christ and all sorts of things. The other bit was at another certain point, I forget the exact years, the Qabalah as a tradition was starting to fall out of favor. Not necessarily favor, but it was starting to get lost. And the way Spain was going, because a lot of this particular type of Qabalah comes out of Spain, was really just with the Jews being expelled and then the Moors and all those things. What was going on? Well, water. Apologies. All right, my cats are causing chaos in the background and just keeps distracting my eye. But they were essentially seeing it as this was, the world was kind of essentially coming to an end. And the only way they felt, these Spanish Jewish rabbis felt that they could keep the world from falling into utter chaos is by teaching Qabalah to everyone and get everyone working and practicing it as much as possible. And that would reinvigorate and would get people back in touch with their spirituality, with the specific Abrahamic deity, and that would really that would stop this mass chaos from happening. And so they also, in their own way, kind of blew the doors open on that. And those two things are why the practice and working with Qabalah, or if I'm talking about Jewish stuff, I say Qabalah. If I'm talking about Hermetic Qabalah, so the occult version of Qabalah that's spelled with a Q. Some certain Jewish sects don't acknowledge, Qabalah. They view it as essentially cultural misappropriation, whereas others view it as simply just another extension of it as well. One of the most famous writers on the Qabalah and Qabalah was a man named Israel Regardie, who was a student of Aleister Crowley, who is also Jewish, and he uses Jewish heritage and understanding of Qabalah and combined it with the Hermetic Qabalah. And it is a really, really in-depth, fascinating topic. And it's the main reason it's used within occultism and ceremonial magic is that it provides a perfect map to the universe. The 22 paths that build up the tree. Do you see this is so this is from the Hermetic Qabalah. One thing you'll notice is those little lines between each sphere are the different pathways. There's 22. When it looks like this is the Hermetic Qabalah. But the Qabalah, the tree from traditional Judaism, looks like that. You can see there's 2 extra lines up here on either side and no lines going down here. So the 2 systems are slightly distinct in their way. Yes, and the circles are called the Sephiroth, different pronunciations. And those pathways are made up of the 22 Hebrew letters, which match up to the 22 cards of the major arcana of tarot. Each of the Sephiroths line up to different planetary energies. The angels have been mapped on their different, and again, in the Hermetic Qabalah, Kabbalistic sense, the Greek gods, the Egyptian gods, I've seen some folks working on mapping out the Aztec gods, have all been mapped. Again, it's the idea that it's such a perfect map to the universe of symbolism of, the way it's just kind of constructed, that almost everything you can ascribe and it'll fit. almost seamlessly, almost. And so with that kind of, it's used as a filing system, like I mentioned, as a way to really, you can map out whatever you're doing, whatever ritual you're doing, whatever exercise you're working with, meditation, path working stuff. They really can open the doors for just being able to, okay, I want to work with the energies of the moon, which is Yesod, which is where the astral realm lies. What tarot cards lead up to there? What Hebrew letters there? What, the Hebrew letters, the Hebrew alphabet has been proven in some anthropological senses to be the roots of the runes. So can we use runes, in that sort of way too? Like, you can work with it in a variety of ways and figure out what exactly you need to do. Because, well, maybe you're not Jewish and you're not a ceremonial magician, so you don't want to work with the Hebrew alphabet like that, but you want to work with your tarot cards and your runes. You can use those sort of ways, while acknowledging that the Hebrew letters, the Hebrew alphabet helped bring about the runes. And so you can find these little ways in which to work with things, all just from that tree in and of itself. And which working with the tree is like a quarter of that, if that, of the Kabbalistic system. Like, there's so much more, especially if you're sticking with just traditional Qabalah. Like, ceremonial magicians have a tendency to just stick with the tree and that's it, or they work with the Hebrew alphabet as individual letters, not as a living language. And so when you're looking at, Qabalah versus Qabalah, you got to be very, very conscious of that, because there's sometimes you got to remember, again, it's from a still living tradition and a thriving culture. And so we don't want to just pick willy-nilly from it either. Is this the tree we were learning about in sigilization class? I'm not. All right, let me see here. Okay, cool. Yes, thank you for answering that.
In sigilization class, we are learning about the tree of life and the tree of death, which stems from the Qabalah that they are talking about. Yeah,
the tree of death, which comes from the Kutos.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna talk about it a little too. I'm ready. There's the tree of death right there. If you haven't seen it, you can see Satan on the top. So this would normally be would be seen as like this to where's my other one? Because the other name for the tree of death is it's seen as the roots of the tree of life. So it almost be like that kind of concept, They grow into each other. The other way of viewing it is they're called the shells. And so they're like the dead husks around the Sephiroths. And so it exists behind the tree of life. But once you start getting into the concepts of each Sephiroth contains an entire tree, which then also contains the Sephiroths, and you start getting to these gnarly 3D models, it's insane. And then Stella, what is Qabalah? Qabalah is a form of Jewish mysticism that tarot aligns to, astrology aligns to, and those sorts of things. So hopefully that answers your question. In the ancient Irish culture, there's a system called Ogam. It's basically around to read and listen to the trees. Yep. Oh yeah. My first teacher was a druid, and I learned about the Ogam bit. That's cool. Yeah. Shaniqua, the trees, they look the same just the way they're in print, but if they were a perfect diagram, you could actually see the way they're again, one tree of life, tree of death sort of thing. So they aligned to something just a little different. All right, cool. So that's Qabalah in the most minutest way. Like I said, we're barely touching on things here. This is just a snapshot of a snapshot for all of these systems, because there's just so much, and we're gonna have some fun getting into all of them. The next system I want to talk about is called Enochian Magick. if you've ever watched Supernatural or seen most, I think I don't. I'm trying to think if there's any other pop culture references. I know a lot of manga and anime pulls from Enochian and Solomonic traditions. But yeah, so the whole like them speaking Enochian and drawing the certain sigils and everything on the walls and all that, that's where this all comes from in very much a fanfic way. I mean, it's supernatural. We're obviously not expecting, we're not expecting accuracy. Elena, you practice Enochian Magick. That is awesome. Dude, I am so down. Hell yeah. So, Enochian Magick, what is it? Enochian Magick was founded by two guys. Their names are John Dee and Edward Kelly. John Dee was Queen Elizabeth I's court astrologer. He had the largest library in Europe at the time. He was just this he's the guy who coined the term the British Empire. Like he did all the first what do you call it? It's not is it cartography? He mapped all the first like the ships sailing out and everything with their routes. I think that's a cartography. Oh, thank you for liking my curly shirt. But yeah, this guy was like, he was a big deal in Victorian England. And Edward Kelly was not as big of a deal. There's a lot that people have opinions on Edward Kelly. He was either a very, very talented scryer, the most cunning con man, or somewhere in between of both. And I'll go on a little bit as to why I personally believe I think he was absolutely an incredible scryer. And again, this is my personal opinion here on that one. But the basic story goes is Dee, this again very learned man in Victorian England, was like, dude, everyone in like biblical days was being able to talk to God, yet nobody has talked to him in like forever. Why can't we? We should try. And so he started trying. He recruited the help of Edward Kelly, and they would scry. They would use a black mirror. It is said that they were using obsidian, an obsidian crystal mirror, and they were trying to make contact with these angels, with these divine entities. They would eventually make contact with these angels, and these are not the like angel numbers, don't fly faster than your guardian angel can fly kind of angels. These are like the be not afraid. You view them and you will go insane kind of angels. So it's definitely a kind of a different strata there. A lot the alphabet and the whole system called Enochian, John Dee would just refer to as angelic magic, but with how like angelic magic is kind of worked with through like the more new age systems that are more modern now. A lot of it's just Enochian is just a really clear line on how to differentiate. So they started scrying and they made contact with these angels, and they were given this entire alphabet called the Enochian language that has structure, syntax, grammar. It like if Edward Kelly was a con man, he again had to be the most cunning because he was able to create an entire functional language during these like several year workings with Dee. Like it was absolutely like it would be a feat in and of itself. It is said that to practice Enochian magic is to bring about the end of the world and the apocalypse. It is some fascinating stuff. If you are familiar with Wicca or just modern paganism in general, and you've ever done an invocation, Watchtowers of the West, I call unto thee. The Watchtowers come from Enochian magic. That's the root. That's where they come from. The basics of working with Enochian magic, for the most part, is working with the elemental tablets. So I couldn't find a colored version in any of my books, but you can see these tablets. So the big cross in the center is called the cavalry cross, and which divides it into 4 quadrants. And then each quadrant has their own little cross there. And so while one tablet may be like this is the air tablet, each tablet also has the air of air, water of air, fire of air, earth of air quadrant in that tablet itself. And so when you scry on, you pick a line, a section of this to scry, and these names, yes, it does have things. It does have something to do with the Book of Enoch in that it's named Enochian after Enoch, being that Enoch was one of the last ones to be able to talk to God in that sort of way. But yeah, it is, there's different angelic entities that reside in here. Over certain quadrants, like if you start crossing lines from like boundary to boundary, there's certain demons that reside in there. And there's, again, 4 of these, because they all have, 1 for each element as well. Enochian Magick, the other thing, the way you work with it is by scrying the aethers as well. The aethers are, if in your ventures into occultism and magic, you were ever in, like, I think there was always a chunk of us that in our desire to be a little edgy, we picked up LaVey's Satanic Bible, and there's all that like jumbly fancy words at the end. Those are his recitations of the Enochian aethers. And I'm just kind of checking in here. Bam. The book, this one, Elena, is Enochian Magick, A Practical Manual by Gerald J. Schuler. It's this one. It's from Llewellyn's High Magick series. So I particularly wanted this copy because the cover was used by a Italian goth band, and their one album that they ever did, and their band is called Thelema, and I'm a Thelemite, so it is not the best book on Enochian, I will say. Depends on how you practice Enochian. On that note, with that, actually, the aethers. So these aethers are, they're also called the Enochian keys. They're a series of, for lack of better terms, spells, invocations, prayers, whatever you want to call it. Prayers is probably closest, that you recite while scrying, either through candle or, again, a crystal ball, or whatever your chosen method of scrying is, and you receive these visions, and you dive deeper and deeper into these airs. And these angels that reside over each air, aether, air, potato, will show you different things as you unlock and go further into your practice. If any of y'all are familiar with the goddess that's kind of becoming a lot more popular right now, the goddess Babylon, Bablon. That is a deity that comes from Crowley's working of the aethers as well in his book Vision and the Voice. And this book is, again, so I'll put the name of this book here. It is, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it as a good introduction to Enochian. It's very stylized, I'll say that. But I will put it here. Enochian Magick. Practical Manual by, I'm just going to put the last name of the guy. Chueler. All right. Oops. Oh. Do I put it to everyone in meeting? There we go. All right. If I were to recommend a book, I don't have it on in my right up here. I think my roommate's reading it. It's a book by Aaron Leach. I think it's literally called like the Enochian Manual or something like that, or Practical Enochian. Aaron Leach just spells it out plainly, puts it simply. And I'll type his name here. Again, I forget the title of the name. My roommate's got it downstairs. Because the reason I like his stuff is there's two ways in which to work with Enochian magic. There are there's those who are deep purists, John D. purists. They work, yes, essential Enochian. Thank you, Lena. That's the one. D purists, pretty much, they only consult D's writings and D's diaries and those things, and that's it. And they're like, we're going to work the system the way D created it, the way D founded it, and practice it himself. And then there is the people who follow the Golden Dawn method. The Golden Dawn is a magical society, which we're going to talk on a little later. But essentially, the main difference is the Golden Dawn didn't have access to all of these diaries because they were lost. True history at that time, we did not have them. We didn't know where they were. We didn't even know if they still existed. So they filled it with what they could and pieced it together in the best ways they could. And that is the way Aleister Crowley got it. That is the way Alex Saunders, the guy who created Alexandrian Wicca, got it. And that is the way, if you pick up a book on Enochian magic, for the most part, it's probably going to follow the kind of like a Golden Dawn kind of bent. Aaron Leach takes the D-Purism and the Golden Dawn styles and kind of combines them to make it a more true to accuracy, because the thing with Enochian magic and D was very, very much a man of the Bible. He was very much, a devout Catholic or devout Christian. And a lot of what he says, you need like this specific seal made out of this specific metal under each chair leg of the table, and you need this belt and this thing and da-da-da-da-da. It's because he was really scared. And a lot of it was for protection. But how really necessary is it? There's some magicians who claim that you really don't need all that. And so Leach kind of takes the two schools and really gives you a working functional system. And so that's the one I would recommend the most for that one. Leslie, are the books I posted good for learning more on ceremonial magic? Let me see. So Buckland is going to be Wicca. And Saxon Wicca at that. So while good, may not necessarily be ceremonial per se. And then I think I saw you post Lesser Key of Solomon. Yep. Oh, and you got the nice the Peterson one. That is a historically accurate one. Your mileage may vary with that particular one on traditional, like the way Solomonic Magick is worked now, planetary magic is worked now, just because that is the historical accurate one, and we did not. The Golden Dawn and the other magicians of the late 1800s, early 1900s didn't have access
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? It's not you.
Yes. Okay.
It was on their side and on their computer. Don't leave class. It's not us. It's not the Zoom room. It was on their
Okay.
end.
Thank you.
Of course.
I can hear you, but the screen is frozen.
Yeah, it was on their end, so they're going to leave and come back really quick. It's not on our end.
So we don't need to leave ourselves and
nope,
just
you
wait?
guys, yep, just wait 2 seconds. You're good. Please stay. Don't leave.
Okay, sounds good.
They'll be right back. You can continue asking about the books. Class is going to continue. Just give it 1 sec. It looks
Hello,
like
I think I'm back.
there we go. Cool. Hi, welcome
Sorry,
back.
my computer froze, so I kept hitting wait, and it was like, no, you're gonna exit, and so I had to like go back and get the link again.
I can see you movement, Adonay.
All right, perfect. And y'all can hear me?
Can hear
Yes.
you too.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Sorry about that. I mean, I'm not surprised that the technical difficulties were happening during the Enochian part, because it's common, like anybody who's worked Enochian, it's a common thing. Like if you're doing Enochian magic, you want to cover your like outlets and plugs because it'll cause like electrical things to go wrong. So I'm not surprised. Yeah, Elena says she works with Enochian. I bet you she could also could confirm that. All right. Yep, so true. Yep, there we go. All right. True. Do you want me to just keep going, or because I don't see the recording stuff again? Do you want to just keep going?
Yeah, the recording is still on. You're good.
All right, sweet. All right, well, enough of Enochian before it takes to take a glitch again. We can definitely talk more on that at another later time. My phone once broke from doing Enochian magic. Oh my god, yeah. Lon Milo to Ket of Ceremonial Magician is like, oh yeah, you can use an old phone to scry. Just keep, because it's just black screen, right? It's like a black mirror. And I'm like, huh, you want that thing to explode? So yeah, so that is Enochian in true form, right there, demonstrated for everybody. The next thing I want to talk about is just what is generally referred to as Solomonic Magick. There's two main styles of Solomonic Magick, and Solomonic Magick can also be seen as a subcategory of the Grimoire Tradition, which we'll talk about after. But so Solomonic Magick is the two main styles are the Goetia, the lesser key of Solomon, and then planetary magic, which comes from the greater key of Solomon. The lesser key, which is the one that was pictured above, that somebody had mentioned that they have. The lesser key is demon work. And these are not, again, kind of like Enochian, these are not demons in the like, there's a demon in my house, or there's a possession, or there's some weird energy going on. Let me just, do a smoke, a smoke cleansing and throw some salt and stuff, like get it rid of it all. The goetic demons are a whole nother thing. They are not to be trifled with. So these are what their seals look like. Over here, you can see some of them. That's a Stolas. If you've seen some of those animated shows that are online that some people have opinions on. To work the goetic system, you need to create a magical circle that is the specific Solomonic circle to go with this. This is not just call the watchtowers kind of thing. Like, you need a specific circle. You need what is called a triangle of art, which is a little triangle with a scrying mirror in the center. That again is surrounded, both this triangle and the circle are surrounded with specific divine names and energies and things. And that is when you can do these that's when you can do these invocations. something I want to kind of touch on here real quick: invocation versus evocation. I don't know if just how much if you're familiar with the difference, if y'all are familiar with the difference, but just in case, invocation is bringing to manifest in kind of like your mind's eye, right? Like you're feeling it, you can sense it, you can see it in your mind's eye. That's an invocation. Sometimes even like think of like almost like you can feel like almost like you're embodying them. Evocation is bringing something to actual physical manifestation, like you can physically see them with your eyes wide open. So that's kind of that's what's kind of going on here. The goetic demons, you can invoke or evoke them. Now, yeah, the history. So vaguely familiar with the goetic demons. What is the origin of the Goetia? So the goetic demons have a couple different origins depending on how you want to go. The traditional ceremonial magic, Solomonic route, is that they are demons that King Solomon, as in the son of David, as in David and Goliath from the Bible, King Solomon trapped into these seals, like I just kind of showed you, right? Into these seals, and then used and to work for him, to help him, gain riches and this and that. It is said that I want to say it's the building of the first temple. He was instructed that no human could place the first stone that would build the first temple in Jerusalem, and so he used according to legend, he used some of these goetic demons to place that stone, because again, no hand can touch it, no human hand can touch it. So they're demonic entities that through Solomonic magic we can control and work with and learn from each demon. Like Stolas, the 36th spirit of Stolas, he is a great and powerful prince, appearing in the shape of a mighty raven at first before the exorcist. He teaches the art of astronomy and the virtues of herbs and precious stones. So by working with Stolas, you could learn, about astronomy and herbs and precious stones. He also used those demons to cut the stones in perfect rectangles, like lasers, like laser accuracy. Yes, yeah. He used them a lot in the building. And so, it's really, again, with these seals, that you kind of work with them, you can bind them. I know a few goetic magicians who, like one, the person who got me into ceremonial magic, like she straight up has like full intimate relationships with these goetic demons and things. It's pretty interesting. You'll notice some of my language that I'm using with these, again, binding, controlling. There's another way of working with the goetic demons, which is a school of thought called demonolatry, which is more about working with these energies and these spirits as, in a consensual manner. And we'll get into that a little bit too. But because and the reason why the demonolators kind of do this is because historically, almost every single one of these 72 demons were ancient Mesopotamian Sumerian deities that the Abrahamic traditions vilified and demonized. And so demonolators will work with these demons, honoring them as the gods they essentially once and still truly are. And we'll get into demonolatry a little bit more later, because they also work with the Qliphoth, the tree of death, and the shells and all that stuff we were talking about earlier as well. The other side of Solomonic magic is the planetary stuff. So if you've ever done if you're interested in astrology and planet and magic, you ever start I want to do like a full moon ritual, or I want to do it's like today is Wednesday, so it's Woden's day, that's Odin. All right, what planets aligned to Odin? And you kind of started getting into that stuff. That was influenced by Solomonic planetary magic. Christine, no, I do not want someone to get hurt. The Goetia provides the proper incantations, invocations, license to depart. A lot of study goes into this, a lot of preparation, cleansing, knowing your banishing rituals, like the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram and such, going out before you can do this. Again, we're just touching on these things. There's more information, less how to practice. But yeah. But so the planetary stuff, a lot of that comes from Solomonic tradition. If you've ever seen these kind of talismans and things, so this is like the talisman of the moon, right? You can use these talismans to invoke certain energies, certain lunar energies and those sorts of things. You can work with, so like, let's say you want to learn more, you want to gain more confidence, you want to become stronger, you want to be more able to really set and state your boundaries. You can get and consecrate a Mars talisman, again, the god of war, strength, endurance. And, you can, if you consecrate this Mars talisman with a Marsian oil, or let's say oil of abramelin, or what's another good, like protection, frankincense, even oil of frankincense, you can use that to, and then you consecrate it on at a certain point when Mars, say like when Mars is in a certain place. These ideas like are called like planetary hours, planetary days, where the zodiac is and everything in the sky. Pulling out your rituals and scheduling that way, a lot of that is inspired by the Greater Key of Solomon, also known as just the Key of Solomon. And so this is where ceremonial magic does get a little results-based, like witchcraft, or other forms of magic. Like, it's, again, you're trying to obtain things, you have an end goal, you're trying to embody something yourself. You're using the natural order of things, you're using the stars in your sky, you're using herbs and oils. And so, yeah, so you're really kind of, ceremonial magicians sometimes like to look down on witches, but it's like, y'all, if you do Solomonic magic, you might as well be a fancy witch. Like, you're just a witch who wants to just be a little extra. Like, that's pretty much what it is. It's pretty good stuff. And what these are grimoires. So there is I've having worked at a metaphysical shop for quite some time. I had a lot of people come in, and I've seen this online as well. There seems to almost be a conflation of a book of shadows, a grimoire, a magical diary, that they're all essentially the same thing, or that they're just fancier names for each other. They're kind of different, if you want to be a little more technical. A book of shadows and a magical diary are absolutely one and the same. They're your personal records of your magical workings, your magical rituals, writing them down. But once, so say like Lady Sheba published the Gardnerian Book of Shadows. By publishing this book of rituals and spells and incantations and tools, and describing how to do said rituals and how to bring, these certain energies into your space, that is when a Book of Shadows essentially kind of starts becoming like a grimoire. A grimoire is a collection of rituals and spells that instruct the magician or the witch on how to do certain magical workings. And so, like, your personal journal may be a book of, you may call it a Book of Shadows. But if you go and buy a Book of Shadows at the store and it's already filled with all rituals and everything for you to do, to learn and memorize and work with, that's essentially grimoire. And so the Grimoire tradition is these books and these collections of journals, manuscripts that for some reason or another are designed to either teach you something, put you in contact with certain entities, energies, or whatever. One of the more famous ones outside of the Solomonic ones is the Grimoire of Armadale. This, again, like, you can, so there's like, you can see these talismans are kind of similar to the talismans in the Solomonic stuff, right? Not every grimoire is going to use talismans like this. Talismans are a very, very common thing in the Grimoire tradition. If that idea of like, working these old, like the oldest grimoire in record is the PGM, the Greek Magical Papyri, right? Which is like this text that came about from, again, when the Egyptian and the Greek cultures met and clashed and co-created. It is this Greco-Roman Egyptian huge, amazing thing. Like so much of the modern witchy and occult traditions come from the PGM. So definitely that it is not the most accessible thing in the world. But if you're kind of like, this idea sounds kind of cool, it's like spells, but just a little bit, a little bit more extra. This one, The Magical Grimoires, again by Aaron Leach, you can tell I like him, is a really good introduction to the Grimoire tradition. This doesn't have like all the grimoires in here per se, but it talks about planetary hours, it talks about how to make incense, it talks about how to consecrate tools with certain oils and things, what each certain, like the different like hours and what different how they're associated, like different magical days and such. Where's the thing I was looking at? 1 o'clock in the morning is good for doing like freeing and releasing stuff. 3 o'clock in the morning is good to cause, if you want to cause a little discord. 4 o'clock in the morning, good for travel, safe passages, and those sorts of so it's like it really spells a lot of things out. And it touches on a lot of the different grimoires. So this is really, really indispensable to anybody wanting to get into the Grimoire tradition. I haven't checked the comments in the section. Hannah, are you a magician or a witch? And what is the difference to you? Or is there a difference? So I refer to myself as a magician, first and foremost, mostly because I follow ceremonial magic. Like when I do my rituals, the main ritual I do with my group, the Temple of the Conquering Child, is called the New Aeonic Mass, which is based off Crowley's Gnostic Mass. It is a ritual that is 27 pages long, takes about an hour and a half to perform. And there's I needed a certain robe in a certain color. Yes, TCC represent. I needed a robe in a certain color. I needed a lance at a certain height. I needed a crown that had a certain symbolism. It's very, very theatrical. And that is how I do my spells. That is how I do my rituals, my workings. I don't make moon water. I don't do crystal grids. I don't use tarot for divination. When I use tarot, I'll place it around my temple wherever it's aligned with where the planets and things are at. I'll scry. I'll scry the cards. One of the things that we also do at the TCC is if we did a Baphomet invocation. So we dressed a candle to Baphomet and I lit up. We surrounded that candle with 8 different devil cards from 8 different tarot decks. And so for me, those things are not necessarily witchcraft per se. Again, it's after a certain point, we're almost splitting hairs really. But yeah, it's just, it's a little different in my personal point of view. And again, it's kind of when you experience it, it's different. And then, but I'm also not opposed to calling myself a bruja, which is Spanish for witch, but I do brujeria, which is a Latino form of witchcraft, which, I mean, if I want to do a money spell in brujeria, I don't use green. I use gold, because gold is the color of Latin American money, not green. Green is American money. I don't use, for me, so purple, what traditional color magic is like mysticism and astral work. Purple in Brujeria is healing magic. TCC just stands for Temple of the Conquering Child. It's my local ceremonial magic temple here in Denver, where we have members and do other classes and rituals and things. But yeah, so that's kind of where I fall as far as personal identity. I'm a bruja and a ceremonial magician. Danny, how do these tools and specific rituals enhance the magical purpose and results of the spell or ritual? So again, I don't tend to do results-based magic myself. So Solomonic traditions, Grimoire tradition is not something I have a lot of experience with. I'm familiar with it. I've studied it. I've worked with it with other people who've done like kind of group work, but I've never done like one-on-one because it's just not my personal calling. But it is a cornerstone to it is a big part of the ceremonial magic tradition. So hence why I'm mentioning it here. So as far as like, how do these tools and specific rituals enhance the magical purpose and results of the spell or ritual? I'm not looking for results. When I do magic, and a lot of ceremonial magicians are kind of this way. If you're familiar with, like, if anybody here is familiar with yoga, bhakti yoga, right? Devotion, prayer, those sorts of things. That is what magic is to me. That is kind of my purpose. The purpose of my magic, the purpose of why we do ceremonial stuff is for really perfecting of the self, working on our own divinity, kind of like, I'm like, okay, we're going to segue here just because I see this question popping up about 3 different times right now. Within Thelema, and again, that's the path I follow. It's the one I feel called to the most. It's what the basic framework my temple runs with. We are each divine entities experiencing the universe, right? We don't need to, become and do high vibe things because low vibe is going to bring us down. None of that matters. We are divine energies because we are. Simple fact of being. So with that divinity and that experience of the universe, that is the point. There's a saying we have in Thelema: for pure will, unassuaged of purpose, delivered from the lust of result, is in every way perfect. It is about simply being. It is about learning. It is about growing. It is about embodying balance. It is about identifying with the divine masculine and the divine feminine in every way possible. It is about uniting those polarities within ourselves and essentially embodying and becoming Baphomet ourselves, that divine androgen. It is about understanding and learning how the elements work and the basic core foundations of not just the earth, but the universe itself. It's a lot more grandiose than typical earth worship, because earth worship, we see ourselves as like one with the earth and one with the cycles. Here, we're seeing ourselves as one with the divine emanation, that this physical realm, this entire Milky Way and ever-expanding universe, all the galaxies that we can see in the telescopes are just that. This is just the end. This is the physical plane. And we strive for balance and unity with everything else above that, everything else that goes further. That's the point. I don't, I'm not trying to do love money spells. I do, I use tarot if I'm trying as a meditation tool to try to figure out, okay, my anxiety is really bad today. So what's going on? What is really causing it? Oh, I'm really anxious because of this, this, and this. So I know I can do this banishing ritual that's going to help disperse all this external energy that I've picked up from everybody else. And I can just sit here and, okay, where is I do a lot of solar work. So what's the station of the sun right now? Let's focus on trying to embody that, and where does that play into my chart, and try to do that sort of thing. Yeah, self-knowledge, self-guidance, those sorts of things. that's the point. Results are kind of that's not what we're doing here per se. Again, clearly ceremonial magic with the Grimoire traditions do have results-based aspects, and you can use Qabalah for results-based aspects. You can use a lot of this for results-based stuff as well, but at the end of the day, that's not the only point. I hope that kind of makes sense. Eliana, yeah, must ask angels to help me with alchemy on myself. Exactly. I think I saw somebody up there earlier. The internal versus the external alchemy, which we'll touch on a little bit too. I know Alexander does an alchemy class, so we're not going to touch it too much. Danny, I'm glad that yoga reference helped. So why don't I use money spells? I ask myself that a lot, especially because I'm broke working 2 jobs. I'm like, let's see here. There's the personal answer, and then there's the teacher answer. The teacher answer is that I just don't feel called to doing that type of work. That's just, and I say teacher as in like I have my own students outside of the academy and everything. Like I just, at the end of the day, I don't feel called for that kind of work. The other answer is probably trauma somewhere, All right. What time is it? Well, how we doing? All right, we're at 8:30, 8:26. We're at least Denver time, so we're doing good. Cool. All right. Well, funny enough, the next thing on my list is alchemy. So again, with Alexander doing an alchemy class and everything, I'm just going to kind of touch on this. So yeah, again, alchemy, the whole spiritual alchemy, which is again the turning the base metal is the human soul, and the gold is making our souls divine, right? Not worthy of the divine, not worthy of God, but divine in and of ourselves, right? Any of y'all who've taken her class, you're probably familiar with like the whole red work, black work, white work kind of whole thing. Basic synopsis for somebody who may not have taken those classes. The black work is like the purging of all the icky and whatever the crap you don't like, you don't need about yourself, the stuff that holds you back. The red work is that then taking that base, that raw soul substance, once you've like stripped away, shadow work, right? So black work is shadow work. And so once you've ripped away all the trauma and all the conditioning, you're kind of left a little sore, you're left a little raw, right? You're left a little red. And now it's that work of transmuting that shadow, that pain into something constructive, right? It's realizing that, so I have chemical anxiety. I just, no matter what I do, that's just what I kind of deal with in this life. So rather than, letting it just control me, I can deconstruct it and realize, well, okay, why do I have this anxiety? Well, it's because of A, B, and C, and D. But because I have that anxiety, I can then take that and, it makes sure that I have, all these things I need to be able to do these sorts of things, right? Like my anxiety, while at times, is one of the biggest reasons I'm able to successfully work and run this temple for the last year and a half, because it, rather than working against it, I've learned, okay, so I'm anxious because I like projects. I like working on things. I need a creative outlet. I was anxious because I didn't have something to work with, something to express myself with. I was anxious because I needed community. I felt isolated. I was anxious because of my feeling isolated and stagnant, I wasn't eating the best, and which was making my anxiety worse. So it's like I can use, okay, well, this is why I'm feeling this way. So what can I do? And I can create something. I can create community. I can, plan a class and ramble at 60 some odd strangers for 2 hours. I can use that. So that's like that red work, right? And then that white work, there's that, you know, you've transmuted that pain into action, and now you are going, right? Now you are expressing that divinity, that Christ consciousness, if you will. You know, that Buddhahood, if you're familiar with Ceremonial Magick, that knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel, you know, those sorts of things, right? You can just go out there and be that, and do that work there. Now, the idea of alchemy only being that, or like that, the whole turning base metals into gold was all a metaphor for this work, is actually a fairly newer concept. Traditional alchemy was legit, straight up chemistry, trying to find a stone to help us live forever. But also it did have, you know, some symbolic stuff too. We weren't doing, you know, we weren't trying to live forever so we could be deviants our entire lives, although being a deviant can be fun. You know, we were doing it, you know, to be able to attain these goals. Eastern Standard, what? Okay, so half hour. Yes, I have about a half hour left, so that is what I'm planning. Cool. So yeah, won't go much more on alchemy. The other thing, so one of the other ones I want to talk about is Gnosticism. So Gnosticism, the Gnostics were like this weird subsect of heretical Christians that believed that the God who created this physical world was actually a usurper, a demiurge, that created matter out of this negative things, right? So the kind of like in that sort of like a Buddhist idea of like that existence of suffering kind of thing. But because they were doubting what was written in their own Bibles, they were constantly, the main part where Gnosticism comes into play is the seeking of truth, that desire for knowledge and not being settled on just the answers we are given. Gnosticism. There's a spelling in there. The most famous examples of this sort of Gnosticism comes from the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi Library. This is where you start getting to like the, you know, the Book of Mary Magdalene and those sorts of things, as well as other heretical concepts. But Gnosticism, in its desire for truth, again, plays a heavy role within ceremonial magic, because again, while these grimoires and these things may tell us how to work with planets, how to work with energies, following a book will only get you so far. You gotta work, you gotta do. In magic, in ceremonial magic, we call this the UPG, unverified personal gnosis, Gnosticism. UPG, unverified personal gnosis, essentially means something you've learned by contacting the Enochian angels, by working with the goetic demons, by this whatever avenue you're doing, or avenues, and learning these truths about the universe that feel fundamental to you, but because you can't back them up by research and sources and history, they may not be true for everyone. And so you don't want to talk about them as truths for everyone. But that UPG for you is so important. And Gnosticism is kind of that cornerstone of seeking out that truth. This is the troublemaker. But yeah, a mix of Egyptian and Greek mysticism for Christian elements entered, absolutely. If you dig far enough, there's Egyptian Gnosticism, there's Greco-Roman Gnosticism. Yeah, absolutely. But the reason I bring up the Christian elements mostly is just as far as the ceremonial magic aspect is concerned, those are the kind of the bits that play in more in the ritualistic concepts. And yeah, that's a little torty. This one's Hilda. Yeah, this one we have they're twins, Hilda and Zelda. I wonder, where did I get those names, huh? Oh, here's, and this is Zelda. Can a person avoid the Christian aspects? I don't believe in Christianity. Absolutely. So like Curly's Gnostic Mass has nothing to do with Christianity, but it's called the Gnostic Mass because again, it's that search for truth. Gnosticism doesn't necessarily need to involve Christianity. And if you're seeing a running theme here, there's a lot of Abrahamic stuff in this, and that is where a lot of like witches traditionally don't delve as much into ceremonial magic, because a lot of witches, and me being one of those when I was younger, there's sometimes a lot of trauma packed into our religious upbringings, and so anything Abrahamic can sometimes be difficult to work with. I know it was for me when I first got into it, but yeah, a lot of this stuff does have Abrahamic origins, just they're not always used in Abrahamic ways now. But yeah, so that's Gnosticism. Yeah, gnosis and knowledge are etymologically related. Yes, they are. Little side note on that one. Kind of what I was talking about, like what I do, what the whole thing I was kind of talking about with ceremonial magic, that is called theurgy. This whole like just devotion to the divine. Theurgy is a Hermetic Gnostic way the West developed its own version, essentially, of Bhakti yoga. They're not related. They're not like the West was trying to make their own version of Bhakti yoga, but they're literally, we're one human species. We all, a lot of our ideas, while some being closed and culturally specific, there's sometimes a lot of overlay, and this is just one of those. But yeah, theurgy is kind of what I was talking about, like with what the kind of the goal of ceremonial magic is. And yeah, it's about devotion to the divine. It's about prayer, like prayer, not in just the like, dear God, bless mother and father, but it's like what in we have to linguists call it enslaving ourselves in prayer, and that just giving ourselves fully to the universe with a capital U. To if we want to embody, so say like if like we're a devotee of Dionysus and we want to fully devote ourselves to Dionysus, we embody Dionysus. Would be careful if you do that. But yeah, it's that full, definitely an expression. But yeah, it seems like not delving into Abrahamic origins would not allow for the full experience. Absolutely, yeah. And yes, also, Ophelia, I believe there's truth and lies in everything. Absolutely. I was reading, I was just watching a video on this Liber Samek, the Bornless ritual, which is like this like goetic exorcism invocation, and I was just pulling out my Bible that I have just to kind of like match up passages and things. Like, if it works, it can, and if it's not your thing, then it's not your thing. And of course, we can't talk about ceremonial magic and how it would influence the later neo-pagan communities without talking a little bit about sex magic. So, sex magic, there are a couple things with it, and we're not going to get graphic at all with it. But the one thing I want to merely mention is, so a lot of the Western understanding of sex magic that is not tied to Tantra, and again, Tantra is not only sex. Tantra's like 15-20% of, like, sex is like 20% of Tantra, maybe. Like, there's so much more to it. But when we're not dealing with tantric influences on Western sex magic, when we're purely talking about a Western understanding of sex magic, a lot of what we do now and work with now was influenced by Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley's main influence on this was an African-American Rosicrucian named Pascal Beverly Randolph. He was pretty much written and wiped out of the occult history books because he was a Black man. Pascal Beverly Randolph wrote a book called Magica Sexualis, that his English translation, his English version was lost, but a Russian woman named Maria Naglowska, who's hanging out in Paris in the 1930s, called herself the Satanic Woman, translated it into French and added a lot of her own stuff. That is the only version we have now. And so you'll see it a lot of the time credited as Naglowska and Pascal Beverly Randolph, and it's called Magica. Well, let me see if I make sure I'm actually typing here. Magica Sexualis. Naglowska is another amazing individual. This was my thing, is I worked at a metaphysical shop, and 90%, if not most, of our sex magic books were written by like hetero white dudes just trying to like use as an excuse to get laid. No. Naglowska is amazing stuff. If you look into her, just be warned in that with I'm going with a kind of a trigger warning, content warning type thing. She experienced a lot of trauma. She experienced a very highly traumatic point in her life, and she kind of came to the point where it was either going to destroy her or she could use this as a point to, launch her power. And she transmuted that trauma into being able to really find power. But that trauma point does come up in her work and her writing, so just be careful. But as somebody who has experienced that type of trauma in my past, her books did me a lot of good. Maria de Naglowska. That's her name right there. But yeah, so just be careful digging, or just not be careful, but heads up digging into her work. But top tier stuff. Her and Randolph. Curly's work on sex magic can be pretty rad. It's really, really veiled and gaudy and heady, because he had an ego the size of the moon, if we're being modest. But them two, amazing. And then the other one I would recommend, which is another book, which is, again, it is written by a dude, but Modern Sex Magic by Donald Michael Craig. He goes into monofocal, dual focal sex magic. He has a whole section where like 6 different women authors come in and add their tidbit, because he's like, I'm writing this, but I can't just be like, I know all of it, because he only knows one side of it. His book is amazing. So definitely recommend checking that one out. And that is Modern, since there seems to be questions on this one, Modern Sex Magic by Craig. And so, yeah, sex magic doesn't have to be physical. Sex magic doesn't have to be, you can do it fully clothed. You can do it fully robed with weapons, like your incense and your dagger, your cup, Gardner's symbolic great right, that famous, the cup and then inserting the dagger, and what does that kind of represent, right? Yeah, like, it doesn't have to be sexy all the time. There's a lot, especially now, there's a lot of conversation about how to utilize it as a healing point. Can it help with low libido and sensory issues? It can, yeah. I know a lot of folks who use monofocal, so solo, sex magic as a way to like heal and work through things that they are currently trying to process and handle. Craig goes into that, and then Gabriella Herstick with Sacred Sex also gets really into it as well. Her stuff is amazing. She's Jewish and Latina as well, by Herstick. This one keeps trying to walk on the keyboard, but I could make a joke right now about our topic and the cat that's here. Anyways, so yeah, so that's that. Symbolic stuff, it pops up a lot in ceremonial stuff. It pops up in witchcraft a lot as well, and it's definitely worth digging into, especially if you've had any sort of issues around that area. There's a lot of healing work that can be done there. The other so I want to talk about 2 groups real quick. the Theosophical Society, and the Golden Dawn. The Theosophical Society was founded by a woman named Helena Petrova Blavatsky, who was a Russian woman. She was the first Westerner allowed into Tibet. Her followers, her like second command in the Theosophical Society, Annie Besant, and her husband were the ones who got Gandhi to read the Bhagavad Gita in the first place. And we all know how that kind of like the nonviolent protests with, and then MLK, and then Chavez, and then the modern movements like the Theosophical Society had the first cremations here in the U.S. And were responsible for a lot of those type of things, kind of like Eastern stuff entering into the Western world as well. Yeah, the class wasn't recorded. Yeah. The Theosophical Society is where we get concept of the Akashic Records, Ascended Masters, all those things. So if you've kind of looked into some of that stuff and that stuff has really intrigued you, I definitely recommend getting into Theosophy. The main thing you want to be careful about Theosophy is that Blavatsky is also the one that introduced the idea of root races, and different races have being more spiritually advanced. So as with everything, go with a discerning eye, leave all the problematic stuff behind, because we're not doing that game anymore. And yeah, so that's like the big thing with that. The Golden Dawn is probably the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, probably the most influential magical society in history. It is W.B. Yeats, Arthur Edward Waite, Pamela Coleman Smith of the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot were members. Aleister Crowley was a member. Diane Fortune, if you've ever seen that book, Moon Magic or Sea Priestess, that duology, she's like the mother of the modern goddess movement. She was a member. Israel Regardie, the Jewish Kabbalist, was also one. Bram Stoker is said to be one, although we don't have verified technical records. The guy who wrote Sherlock Holmes was also said to possibly be a member, and a couple others as well. But yeah, they had this initiatory training magical school, essentially, where you had to go through certain grades, initiations, you learn certain things. Creating your own tarot deck was one of their training things, which is where the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot comes out of. You learn planetary magic, Enochian magic, Solomonic stuff, Qabalah, all these things that would create that pretty much that we're all talking about here, the Golden Dawn taught and worked with and did. It is where some of the most influential people in magic got their start, or people who learned from these people, right? Gardner, who created Wicca, which would launch the entire this entire movement that we're kind of working with right now, worked with Crowley, who was, again, Golden Dawn. So it's, the Golden Dawn, yes, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And so the other thing that I do want to just touch on with the Golden Dawn stuff is y'all have maybe seen the meme of I think so too. I think Walt might have been a Freemason. I'm not sure though. Sounds familiar though, but the y'all may have seen that meme of Crowley trying to storm the Golden Dawn and W.B. Yeats kicking him down some stairs, right? And everybody's like, oh, because Crowley was an arrogant, and Yeats is this famed Irish poet. The reason why Crowley had such a hard time in the Golden Dawn, and why Yeats and Waite actively did not like him, was because Crowley was openly bisexual and what we would essentially refer to as non-binary now. He would live for weeks on end as Alice Cusack, which was his femme persona. He would openly talk about dating these men and such. And Yeats and Waite were staunch Christian mystics and were incredibly homophobic. So if you've ever seen that meme about Yeats kicking Crowley down the stairs, that did not happen. That is based off of some yellow journalism. Secondly, the joke is based in homophobic violence. So just a heads up. Fact check your memes. But the Golden Dawn system still is around today. Israel Regardie's students, the Ciceros, are the main ones pushing it. They have a whole book on self-initiation into it. If you ever want to check out just like true classical ceremonial magic, find yourself a Golden Dawn group. I know there is one here in Denver. It's defunct, but they're kind of trying to get things back going. But yeah, Golden Dawn stuff is phenomenal. And since we got just about 10 minutes left, the other things I want to talk on real quick. So I've obviously been talking about Thelema a lot, Aleister Crowley. The main thing
Hold on, everyone.
things here. Hello again. All right.
Hello.
Cool. All right. That time I just didn't even try to do the wait. I just exited out and came back in. Okay. We're running low on time. So yeah, the whole Age of Aquarius thing, right? The Age of Aquarius was actually a term coined by one of Crowley's students as a way to talk about what Crowley was his ideas of what he called the new Aeon, or the Aeon of Horus, or the Aeon of the Crown and Conquering Child, which again is where my temple gets its name from. The main central text of Thelema is this book called the Book of the Law, or Liber El Vel Legis. And its basic idea is do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. This is not do what you want. This is each individual has one true divine purpose. And we are to do that with single pointedness and nothing else. And the nature of that comes in the second part. Love is a law, love under will. The nature of that law, the nature of your true will is love. If you are doing something and it is not done with love, it is not your true will, and you shouldn't be doing it. And again, that's a love under will. That foundation of that will is love. Right? So the reason I'm spending some time on that, kind of want to talk on those things, is again, Crowley was a big influence on Gardner, who created Wicca. Crowley was a big influence. His whole New Eat, which is the first speaker of the Book of the Law, Gardner would base the Star Goddess on. Diane Fortune would use some of Crowley's stuff as far as goddess work, and some of her stuff as well. His influence is one of those things, when you start looking, it's everywhere. He's on the Beatles album cover. Primus references him and stuff. He's mentioned Matt Orrin in Psychic Witch, that whole chapter on the Great Work. If you read that book, a lot of that is just distilled Thelema and Crowley. If you've ever seen a Wiccan Great Rite, the symbolic Great Rite, that strip comes from the second chapter of the Book of the Law. A lot of left-hand path tradition stuff, all the satanic, theistic stuff like that, influenced by Crowley. Mr. Crowley from Ozzy. Yep. It's just his influence is literally everywhere. You can't really escape it after a certain point. And also, I do want to mention with that, yes, he was problematic. He was a man of his time, and yes, he could be more mean than even just a man of his time. That is where us who are into Thelema, we generally differentiate between Crowley the magician and Crowley the man. Crowley the magician, in his writings, have these lofty, idealistic things. the societies of without prejudice, without hatred, without stuff. Like he actively fought against the Nazis magically, and like actively sent Hitler a package trying to get him to like not do what he was going to do. Crowley created the peace sign. We actually have a military magazine actually figured that out, not even realizing they were talking about Thelema. But yeah, it's everywhere. Rumor says he influenced L. Ron Hubbard. He did in a way. Hubbard would claim to be a follower of Crowley and Thelema, but he got a lot of it wrong. He got a lot of it wrong. Very, very badly. But he did do some work with, he did bop around Agape Lodge, which was at a time the only Thelemic body in the entire world in LA. So he did have he was influenced in some there. But Crowley called him a con man from the first time he met him, but the Agape Lodge group just wouldn't even see him because they didn't see it. So it's like, dang it. The other thing I want to touch on as well is chaos magic, mostly because I see a lot of like, the chaos witch thing. Chaos magic does not mean do whatever the heck you want, no rules, no boundaries, no anything. Chaos magic has structure. Chaos magic has formulas. The difference is we're working with chaos as in the Greek primordial sense of chaos, right? That like in the chaos of the universe and colliding stars and all those things, there is a formula, there is balance, there is structure happening, those sorts of things. Chaos magic pretty much, if Crowley is to Wicca, chaos magics would be Austin Osman Spare, who was an artist who studied under Crowley, did not like all the ceremonial trappings, needing all these tools and things that I talked about earlier, not needing all that, and was just like, we can do magic with like a pen and a paper, and that's it. A sigilization class probably touched on like the idea of how to make sigils from the alphabet and other stuff like that. And yeah, like sigils is probably the number one influence from chaos magic in the mainstream stuff, but the idea of like the chaos witch just kind of being like using whatever you got kind of thing, not exactly tied to chaos magic, but the title still fits and works because sympathetic magic, like it goes like, use what you got, use what you can, capitalism, man. So with all of that is to say, those are a couple different styles and traditions and systems of ceremonial magic. And if somebody wants to get started on ceremonial stuff, definitely recommend checking out, again, the Golden Dawn stuff first. Very, very careful working with anything Enochian or Goetic. Make sure you've studied and have your banishings done before you even touch that stuff. If you've ever seen this tarot deck around, the Occult Tarot, it calls itself the Occult Tarot, but it uses the Goetic demons. While you're not going to summon in a Goetic demon with this tarot deck, yeah, just careful. Main thing is keep a journal, track everything you do. One of the mottos within Thelema, but ceremonial magic kind of uses as a whole, or in a way uses as a whole, is the method of science, the aim of religion. We use scientific means and ends and processes to attain the ends of which religion tries to aim for. I said use a banishing spell. So that's a lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram. That uses the archangels, some Hebrew god names. And if you don't work with the angels, you can use them as elemental stuff. It is one of the best, one of the most thorough, and one of the simplest and easiest banishing rituals to learn. I have used like a Ouija board and there were things coming through, and one banishing ritual, boom, those things were gone. Done. Simple. Like, it's what I like about ceremonial magic is a lot of it's formulaic. my neurodivergent brain, and also having aphantasia, I can't always just visualize this or just feel that, I can't. So giving me a structure, giving me a rubric to learn really helps. So I really do like that. So yeah, that's what I mean by that banishing spell. Another random side question: why do I always think of Crowley as supernatural? Because the character Crowley. And yes, they definitely did that on purpose. Because there's also another demon in there called Alistair. Good Omens, Neil Gaiman has Crowley, like Thelemic references, and his character is definitely named after Crowley. Was there? I think that was the other question. Thank you for putting that list of the temples of the Golden Dawn. That's awesome. And then, yeah, honestly, a lot of my final notes is like why we should work ceremonial stuff is we really kind of touched on why am I doing this thing? And honestly, that's really it, is getting into ceremonial magic, getting into this type of occultism. If you've been feeling like I meet so many witches who are like, I haven't done a spell in months. I'm a bad witch. I'm like a lapsed witch because I haven't done, I don't even charge my crystals or moon water, or I haven't done a full moon dance or anything like that. Yes, you can use ceremonial magic, or you can use divination while being into ceremonial magic. Aleister Crowley did it all the time. The Golden Dawn uses divination. Yes, you can. It's just not my personal cup of tea. But yeah, absolutely, you can do divination. But where was I? Trying to do all these people that are like, I haven't done anything. I'm like a lapsed witch, right? Like a lapsed Christian. I'm just because they haven't done things. And yes, I said, earlier, like doing it is a lot of it. Getting that UPG is a lot of it. But when we can step outside of that traditional witch talk, that traditional 90s witchcraft, which has influenced witch talk of the be a witch to do things. You need to do things to be a witch. Understanding and just realize we are the universe experiencing itself. Laughing with your friends is magic. Crying over, losing somebody, be it in a relationship or be it, to mourning them, is an act of experiencing magic. Realizing that, hey, I don't like who I was, so I'm going to go to therapy. That's magic. You can really, it doesn't have to be the grandiose things. You don't need the robes and the wands and the daggers and the this and the that and the scripts that are 27 pages, but you also don't need all the crystals. You don't need to smoke cleanse just to get rid of things. You can, you are your own power source. Again, we are all gods in our own right. The way Thelema says it, we are all the one true God. We can create our own reality in that sort of way, and nothing and no one should ever treat us as any less than, and we should also give that same respect to them. And with that, everything is an act of magic. So no one's a lapsed witch. No one is a bad, pagan because they haven't done ceremony or they don't remember the last Sabbath they honored. To hell with that. We are magic. We can, by experiencing the world, that in and of itself is magical, and we should honor that and not take that for granted. Love is the law, love under will. Thank you guys. At this point, I think we can stop the recording. And if anybody has questions, I got nothing else to do tonight. So, yeah.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
So what happened with that occult tarot deck?
Nothing actually. So with me, nothing has happened, but it's got the goetic seals on it.
Right.
It's got the goetic demons. And literally, having this out, and if it's on an altar and you start doing some sort of invocation, these things will start popping up.
Oh, okay. Now I want it.
It's more a precaution than anything.
Okay.
I know if there's a temple in California? It depends on where in California you are. There's some Golden Dawn temples around. There's definitely some OTO, Ordo Temple Orientis, which is the largest Thelemic group in the world. There's definitely a bunch in SoCal and a bunch in, there's like 3 in Northern California. So it just kind of depends on what you're looking for. There's also a bunch of indie groups as well. You just kind of got to find them. San Diego. Is there an OTO body in San Diego? I think there might be. Not
San
entirely sure.
Francisco, it says San Francisco and Los Angeles. They have 2 temples. And then there's
Nice.
one in
There we go.
Mountain View. There's one in Mountain View, and then there's an online one.
Nice.
That are all under California on that list that I found.
Thank you again for posting. I really appreciate that.
I just found it. It's on that
right.
link. There's a link in the chat that lists all the locations.
What do you think of Queria Magick? I'm not sure what that is. Quareia. I don't know if I have an opinion on it because I don't recognize it, at least by that particular name.
So are there 72 demons and 72 angels?
No. So the Enochian system is totally different. The 72 demons of the Goetia are biblical in a way. In the Qabalah, there are other angels that are different than the Enochian angels in a way. Again, they're all Abrahamic, but they're different systems, so that's different ways of understanding things. The Enochian stuff specifically comes from a Christian conception, whereas Qabalah is specifically Jewish. Elaine says there are 72 angels of Shemim. They work under the archangels. Yeah. So I would take that one.
So there's not like a specific angel that coincides with a specific demon.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, that was kind of my question. There was like a 2-part question.
Got it.
Thank you.
As far as I know, yeah. Barry said, I've never used that one. Mostly ready to wait. Toth deck is difficult for me. Robin Hood Tarot is beautiful. Since the insurrection, I can never look at that magician card the same way again, though, sadly. Rest in peace, Robin Hood. That was like not that long ago. The Toth deck is nice, simple. I like the Toth deck because it has all the planetary stuff just right on there. So like when it comes to studying stuff, it's easy to see where is what and how they're all connected. One of the decks I like is the Tarot of Ceremonial Magick by Lon Milo Duquette. This one's really good because this has Kabbalistic, Goetic, Enochian, and I Ching references all on your cards right here as you use. So, because they're all interconnected. If you're also if you're really, really good with tarot and you know tarot, especially from a divination point of view, really well, the Rodamundi is a Rosicrucian alchemical tarot. This thing is fantastic. The book it's literally like $35, brand new, but the booklet itself that comes with it, you can learn Ceremonial Magick 101, a lot of the basics of alchemy, of Qabalah, of not the Goetics, but some Solomonic stuff, the theurgy, Hermeticism, just straight from this book alone. Like, this is a really good introduction. And the tarot deck is a really good introduction because, like, the majors use the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith imagery, and then also have what Sephiroth they are and paths they're connected to, and then also the correspondences all on there. While like some of the minors, like this is, what is this? The 5 of Pentacles. But notice there's the haze on the end on each side too, and it's using these like alchemical depictions. This deck is just, it is so fantastic. So definitely recommend this one. And then it says there, demons of the Goetia are the balancing beings to the 72 angels. They're connected, but only in the fact that the 72 angels of Shem Hamardosa are the beings of good and light, and the 72 demons of Goetia are the beings of darkness. This doesn't mean they're evil, that they are very difficult to work with, though. So that is very much true, and that is also the traditional, like, Jewish and Kabbalistic way of working with them. When I do Goetic stuff, or when I'm studying Goetic stuff, I understand them more from a demonology point of view, and their historical understandings as being those old ancient deities. Demonology is the way you can work with them in that sort of way too. Hannah, could you post all the books and tarot decks of bibliography? Yes, I will. I can. If I can't write them all down, I will at least snap a picture and then, but I will definitely try. I'll get them written down. But yeah, when I do the other way of working with the Goetia, Carl Jung has this whole thing of that the Goetic demons are different parts of the shadow self and the dark parts of the psyche. And so by working through them and working with each one, you can work with a different part of your shadow and use it to like unlock, that trauma and release a lot of those things too. And so I think that way, and then they're connected to like the Kabbalistic understanding works a lot better because psychology and Qabalah go, almost hand in hand. Viewing them as historical deities that have been demonized doesn't work as well with that particular conception. Oh yeah. Yeah. Any other questions, comments? All right.
If I may speak,
Yeah.
I think it's a band poster behind you with the 3 guys or people in the coffin. What band is that?
Oh, that's Blackville Brides. That's the name of it.
Okay.
It's actually my partner's, and she got them that's the original band members with like Sandra still in the band from the first album, and it's all signed.
Cool. Okay, it looked like old school UK band, so I didn't know.
Oh yeah, totally. During Gray and all that. Yeah, they all have that same hair metal gothy weeaboo look.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I love it. Yeah, totally. And so if y'all have any other questions or want to find a way to contact me, you can find this will work, I believe, on Facebook and Instagram. This is my temples stuff. I don't have a personal thing per se to give out, but at Conquering Child Denver. So if you're here in Denver, if you're local, if you're in Colorado and you want to come do magic with us, come hang out. We also have library hours, so all these books, come study with us and hang out, read and drink some wine. It's fun. But yeah, you can find the temple there at Conquering Child Denver. I'm working on a website for it. And again, my name's Adonay Quetzal. If you're on Facebook, and I know there's a chunk of y'all in here. We've been chatting. Add me, dude. Y'all, please. It's been fun. But yeah, thank you guys for letting me ramble at you for 2 hours. I'm in Portland. Oh man. Well, I go back home to San Francisco every so often, so. All right. Well, we'll figure. Ooh. Oh, I actually got some friends out in Indiana. Some witches that are also very into ceremonial magic. When are you going to be doing another class? When is the next symposium lecture? I haven't figured that out just yet. Yeah, Honeysuns, if you're looking for some community, if you may know them, Jasmine is the main one who runs it. Contact me and I can see if I can put you in contact with them. I don't know just yet. But I know the next class I'm doing that'll be online will be for my temple and will be specifically studying the main ritual that we do. So it'd be very, very niche. But pretty much, like, let the Academy, like, let us know, like, which one of these many topics we covered are like, oh, that, you know, it's really seemed to be a lot of interest in the Goetic stuff. You know, oh, but I was really into what else we talked about? Planetary stuff, Solomonic, the Grimoire Tradition. Maybe you were into Thelema, and let me talk at you guys for 2 hours about Thelema, because I can definitely do that. You know, maybe it's more the left-hand path kind of satanic stuff that I just touched on. I didn't even get a chance to really get into, because we can definitely do all that. You know, we'll get into it. Egyptian stuff would be very cool. Being that I am not of Egyptian or African descent, I don't always feel comfortable talking on Egyptian stuff. I'll talk about Egyptian a little bit in Thelema, simply just because I like to think of Thelema as Egyptian fanfic. The Orishas, they could definitely touch on. Again, I'm a Bruja, not a Santera or Santero, and that is actually the closed practice, but we can touch on it from an academic, let's learn to appreciate it sense. Because Santeria's influence on Brujeria is, we've been exchanging stuff, you know. I can also do classes on Brujeria and Curanderies as well. Santa Muerte, if anybody knows about her. Yeah, that's La Santita, La Santa Muerte. That's my folk saint here. She's the patron saint of our temple. Do that. On some Nahuatl, as in like Nahuatl, as in the language, I could definitely do some Mexica stuff. I have a whole, in November, I can actively do the pre-Hispanic origins of Dia de Muertos, which is a whole thing I have already written out. That's like about 2 hours or so long. But yeah. Is Santa Muerte closed? Depends. You don't work with Santa Muerte as just another death deity. She is a specific Latino understanding of death. So you definitely need to respect that. She actively is the patron saint of women, queer folks, sex workers, specifically transgender individuals as well. People who work at night, people who are near death or work with death daily, as well as anybody on the outskirts of society. Anybody pretty much the mainstream culture would be like, yeah, not about you. She digs. Yeah, so while she's not closed, you definitely need to respect her. And certain of us, she does expect a lifetime commitment. Like for me, she definitely does. Because that's just a connection I have with her. But there are others, I met other folk, other Latinos as well. Yes, that is my Facebook. Where she just is like, hey, I need you to help me with a thing. Come help me with a thing. And then you're like, all right, I guess I'll help you with the thing. Can I get something in return? And she's like, sure. And then there's other things where you're like, hey, I need some help. So Miss Ma'am, please. And she's just like, okay, but you're going to do something for me. And you're like, okay. Yeah, kind of like that. The lifetime stuff though. If you've ever heard any sort of like lifetime, like if you don't do something, she's going to kill your cousins or your lover or whatever, that's all Catholic BS. But while she is not closed, she is specifically Latino, and you want to make sure you work with her in that sort of way, and you support brown businesses when working with her. You don't want, like that. Yeah, she's like voodoo with a VOO, the VOODOO. Like, it's technically not closed, but also not exactly open either. You gotta do the work. She won't. Yeah, I heard she will hurt you if you break your commitment. As somebody who has worked with her for about 6 years, and for about 2 of those, she gave me the silent treatment because I was just messing up that much. No, she didn't hurt me. She just, her demand, she stopped letting me ask her for help. She stopped doing me any favors, but I had to do a lot of work to earn her trust and her love back. And I did. It's a lot of work. But I hear her from her altar over there. She's like, don't complain. You're being a little bleh. Yeah, substituting the word there. But yeah, she's not going to take people away from you. She's not going to cause you physical harm. She's very motherly. Like, and I say that while understanding a lot of people have trauma around mothers. And mothers are not exactly immune to not using physical violence, but what we mean by motherly, that concept, that's kind of what we mean here. Yeah, maternal. There we go. That's a better maternal. So she's definitely gonna let you know you messed up, but she ain't gonna she ain't gonna take you out either. She sounds like a Shera in Judaism. I'm not familiar with that Shera, but Vanessa, I love working with Mama. That's awesome. It's always rad to meet other Santa Muerte devotees. Is Ashera like another name for like the how do you pronounce it? The Shekinah?
No. Ashera is the goddess of trees, but she is also the divine feminine, while Adonai is the masculine, the divine masculine. Okay. And she's the mirror of him.
Nice. That's what I find funny is, so my name, Adonai, if pronounced in Spanish, spelled with a Y, is my legal middle name. It was my dad's middle name. It was my grandfather's middle name. But because they're from, my dad's side of the family is from El Salvador. In El Salvador and other Central American countries, Adonai, spelled with a Y, is a gender neutral name, which makes my little non-binary heart very, very happy. Like, type in Adonai spelled the same way it's like here spelled for me. And the first song that pops up on Spotify is some Spanish song about a guy singing to this woman, his long lost lover, Adonai, why won't you just come back to him? Like, it's amazing. It's like it's Central Americans use it the same way Mexicans use Jesus and Maria, like our biblical names.
Technically, in Judaism, Adonai is one of the sacred names of God, though. And so, like, giving it to a person seems a little bit...
I've met some people, some witches who were raised Jewish or ethnically Jewish. They're like, "You had a nickname," and I'm like, "If you call me whatever you need to make sure you're comfortable." But yeah, think of Jesus, Jesus. We're literally calling people the Son of God. It's Latinos. We apparently, I don't know. We're just like that is apparently not weird to us. My working theory on that is specifically that if you look at a lot of Nahuatl names, even before prior colonization and conquest, we were naming ourselves after our deities as well. Like, so that's my working theory, is that we just went from one set of deities to another. Still naming ourselves after them, though.
There's even some groups that still name people after deities to this day, like deities that aren't even like really recognized anymore, and they're viewed as like mythology or something. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the name Lucille is the feminine version of Lucifer. So I love Lucy, redhead. Whole nother spin there.
Lucy makes me think of LSD though.
Yeah. Common in Egypt as well. Yep, I think I've seen that as well. All right. Any other questions? Comments? All right. Well, we'll wrap this up.
I have a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Speaking about Santa Muerte and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So there's in the community of Santa Muerte devotees, there's a whole thing about, there's different rosaries, right? Like there's a Catholic version and there's like a more pagan version and stuff like that. But there's an idea floating around that she likes the Catholic version more. And like why is that? And like I mean, I've noticed when I've tried it myself that I've gotten like some pretty powerful like effects with that, like from her. And I'm wondering if it has more to do with like people's trauma around it, and it's like more like a self-sacrifice, like going through the religious trauma, or is it, I don't know, or does she genuinely just like Catholic stuff aesthetically? Like, I don't know.
You're good. So if the pagan one is the one I'm thinking of, it came up, I believe that one came about in the book by Tracy Rollins, if I recall correctly. Tracy Rollins and a lot of the paganization of Santa Muerte are essentially seeing her as just another embodiment of death. And so, like this author, and again, if you want to look into Santa Muerte, stay the heck away from this Tracy Rollins book published by Weiser. She says you can ditch all the Latinidad of Santa Muerte. You can ditch all the Catholicism. You can cast a Wiccan circle, use the runes, use chaos magic to work with La Muerte, and just completely disavow her entire system in its entirety. Santa Muerte, though, is specifically a Aztec goddess of death, Mictlantecuhtli, and the Spanish female Grim Reaper, La Parca, which again comes from folk Catholicism. She popped up in a Catholic country under Catholic garbs, using Catholic methods of prayer, candles, rosaries, oils, all those sorts of things, for a reason. Because that is the way she is expressing. That is the way this understanding of death is expressing herself. So this paganization of it is essentially a Europeanization, a colonization, if you will, of Santa Muerte's true original self, which is at the end of the day also pagan now, right? If pagan means pre-Christian, she was a Mexica deity, an Aztec goddess. But because of, again, the culture that she popped up in right now, how she did, because the earliest records go back to 1700s, 1600s, something like that. No, I think 17, 18s. She popped up in a Catholic understanding of Aztec magic. And so trying to remove her from that, it doesn't work really per se. Each individual's mileage, again, that UPG I talked about earlier, may vary. Your own UPG with her, because if that's the best way you can connect with her, and she will take that over nothing, because she's a bit of a diva. She loves being devoted to. She loves the attention. She loves being remembered and honored and cared for. That might work for you, but it doesn't necessarily mean that overall in the community or her magical system overall that's going to work. So I hope that answers that question. Santa Muerte sounds a lot like Lilith too. Yeah, definitely. They have a dark goddess deities after a certain, when you get broad enough, you can really, they start sounding similar. And that's, related to Kali Ma and Kalich. Again, that same death, that same dark goddess energy. But actively, she is Mexica. She is Aztec. Mexica being Aztec. Could Santa Muerte and Lilith be the same entity? I would personally say no, as in that, again, the universe will operate in archetypes, and so different cultures will understand different archetypes in their own ways. But conflating the two is different. Like, it's one thing when we say Hermes is Mercury because the Romans just pretty much copy pasted what the Greeks were doing, right? And because of the cultural exchange between the Mediterranean and North Africa with Egypt and such, we can kind of say that Tahuti was also related because they were just this exchange of culture and idea, right? So Tahuti could, you could definitely say that is very much related to or be one and the same understanding as Hermes, who is Mercury, who is Odin in the Norse pantheon, because there is stories of, if I recall correctly, I could be wrong on that. I'm not a Norse practitioner. But because there is stories of the Norse gods interacting with the Greco-Roman gods. And so if they were interacting, the Norse gods are interacting with the Greco-Roman gods, and the Greco-Roman gods are stories of them interacting with the Egyptian gods. You can say there's kind of one of the same. There's a direct line there.
Our first source for actually being able to assemble a Nordic pantheon comes from the Greeks because the Nordics did not want to write shit down.
Sorry, my nesting partner over here, another temple founder, says that if y'all didn't hear that a lot of our early Norse stuff we get from the Greeks because the Norse were just not writing anything down. So there could definitely be a connection there in that realm, but this was on the other side of the other side of the world. There was these deities happening. So in that realm, we could say Kukulkan and Quetzalcoatl were related, right? And there's other feathered serpent-like deities in North American natives as well. So you could say those were kind of connected because, again, cultural exchange. But I also, while I do work with Lilith sometimes as Lilith, like the goddess, Adam's first wife kind of conception, Lilith also like historically was like a class of demons in, I want to say, Mesopotamia. So I kind of sometimes work with it in that sort of sense because there's a Aztec understanding that's kind of similar to that I kind of like. Ooh, that's kind of cool. I believe Loki's related to. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say there's an interesting theory that during the Dryas event that like demolished the planet, like, I don't know, 12,000 years ago or something, that before that, there were these intellectual beings that were here and that they were all over the place, and they spread a lot of the same knowledge among many different cultures, and that's why so many cultures have deities that seem almost the same or have a lot of the same similarities. So
that theory, as far as how I know it, comes from Theosophy, Madame Blavatsky, Helena Petrova Blavatsky. In that it's where the concept of ascended masters as that's kind of popular now in like new agey witch talk stuff, but in a very different sense. It's essentially that when the world was young, these masters set out to teach this new world its religion, and the one true religion, as each culture, because of our different locales and languages and things, understood these teachings, thus developed the world religions. That's where I've heard that story from. It's from Theosophy. I don't know if it predates it. It could. I wouldn't be surprised. A lot of Theosophy was a patchwork of a lot of different traditions and stuff. But what's kind of cool is their logo. Let's see if I have a better one. You see this little yellow, you see this,
Oh, that's the Magin David.
Say again?
The Magin David.
Mm-hmm.
That is what we call the Star of David.
Yep. And which also has its roots in Hinduism interestingly enough. In term, the two, the one ascending, one descending triangle. Yeah, so you got the Jewish star. You can see a little bit at the very, very top. There's the Om symbol, and then that little spinny stylized wheel is the swastika.
Is that the Ouroboros?
Yep. So they combine, and then in the traditional, it should also have the Ankh in the center.
Oh.
Because that's the symbol for the Theosophical Society. And their whole thing was, their motto was, there is no religion higher than truth, that we're all interconnected. That to try to take from one is to...
I was just going to say, I think like there's a collective consciousness, and I think that we're all connected. And so a lot of these ideas come through the collective consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that sort of like collective consciousness growth, I've heard, again, more from a theosophical point of view, it was kind of responsible that like, as we grow as spiritual entities, it's why like collectively our species suddenly around the planet discovered fire. It's why, in the 60s, in, all parts of the world, people were just saying, we're done with this, these oppressive shenanigans, trauma, like other colorful words I would normally use. It's why like now, these modern day, like we're, with the Black Lives Matter movement and all these other like pushes, the current wave of feminism, like we're just these leaps in human consciousness. We're all kind of demanding that as we grow as entities of spiritual beings, that the physical manifested world meets those needs, because there are these universal truths that just kind of all tie us together. And I've heard it explained Kabbalistically, and that's like humanity just little by little climbing up the tree until that point in which the way Blavatsky talks about it is as we climb our way back up the tree and unite again with Cather, our world will vanish into a spiritual realm of our own, and another world will come and take its place and begin the cycle, hopefully without capitalism.
Wow. That sounds a lot like Qabalah. I mean, in the Qabalah, it's believed that pretty much like all people are interconnected, and we're all climbing the tree of life, going through all the different pathways on the tree of life. And so it's very interesting. I could talk about this stuff for hours though.
Same. Add me on Facebook or something. There's a quote unquote reconstructed tree of life by a guy named Frederick Codd, Charles Sanfield Jones, the one who coined the term to Age of Aquarius, where he actually reassociates the planets and the tarot cards and everything on the tree's paths. And it's, regardless of whether we think it's accurate or not, it's at the very least fascinating. Like, just a touch of it. Instead of having the priestess card uniting Cather and Tippereth, he has it from Hesod, or he has it leaving Yesod to which side? Which way does it go? It goes to the fem side, and forget which one it is.
Can I ask why you don't use the cards for divination?
Divination's just not my bag, honestly. I've tried. I always just feel like I have nothing to ask. I have nothing to look for. I just, I call it it's a personal preference of I don't like spoilers.
Oh, okay. I use it mostly for my own like internal alchemy, to understand. I have autism, and being autistic, my brain works differently than most people, and so like sometimes I don't understand why certain things happen, and so I'll ask the cards like, why did this happen? Like, what are the archetypes behind it? and it's really helpful for me to like understand situations.
Yeah, whenever I do get readings, it's usually a what is going on in this current moment and just leading up to this moment so I can understand what's going on.
Yeah,
'Cause, yeah, I'm neurodivergent as well, so I feel that.
Oh, you are neurodivergent?
Hmm.
Are you autistic as well?
I do not know that much.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, you have some traits I've seen already.
Probably. Yeah, I was my therapist was through this transgender nonprofit back home, so I couldn't get she couldn't diagnose me with anything per se, but pretty much gave me a couple tips so to move on my way. But yeah. But yeah, pretty much.
You seem to know like pretty much everything. I'm not going to say you know everything, but it seems like you know everything about magic. But I'm sure there's still like so many lifetimes of learning that you could go through and still not know everything.
Absolutely. That's like my favorite part about reincarnation because it means I will actually finish that library. I have time.
Yeah, but the risk with incarnation, not be interested in any of this stuff.
Could be.
So.
I could definitely go into this. Like within the Solomonic tradition, we have a different. Once we take certain oaths, this is the path. Like when I reincarnate, if I haven't finished the path, I may not know that I'm where I'm at exactly, but my soul will know, and I will find that path and get right back to going where I'm going.
I'm kind of wondering if I made a pact in a past life. I don't know, but I feel like maybe I did because I didn't find like magic and stuff like that until later in life. I'm 37, and so I just like learned about this stuff like 5 years ago, and I feel like there's a lot of people that tell me that I have too much success with these things to be a first time user of these things, and I'm wondering if I had a past life.
You know, a good way to kind of find an astrologer who knows how to read the charts from a reincarnation point of view, because your chart will tell you right there, especially depending on what your true node is. Your north node will tell you.
My north node is in Taurus, which I found out is the mysticism node.
yeah, that is. So mine's in Capricorn, so I'm constructing things here this time. Garden of Pomegranates by Regardi. Yes, Barry, that is an amazing choice. Garden of Pomegranates is one of the only books that I've found where where Qabalah and Qabalah and the Hermetic Kabbalists and the Jewish Qabalah communities actively agree on, and it's that book. Like, it's the consensus at the very least. But yeah, that's cool. I believe Loki's related to Hermes. I think you're right on that one as far as Hud is concerned. Yep, but I'm getting hungry, y'all. I came just after work, so find me on social media, add me. I'll get all the books we talked about today into the bibliography section. But yeah, come bug me, ask me questions. I love chatting about this kind of stuff. But yeah, thank you guys. This has been so much fun. And I will figure out when to do a next class. I mean, hell, I got time, so that's what I like to do. So thank you all. I'm gonna head to sign off. I don't know. Thank you so much again. Yes, look forward to seeing you all again soon. Yeah, take care, y'all.